Can everyone mute themselves if they're not talking?
Madam Chair, council members, and participants, we are now live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin the public hearing, I will make the following announcement. Due to the continuing threat to public health from COVID-19 and the Delta variant, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, the Inquirer, Legal Intelligentsia prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Rachel, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance, will you please indicate that you are present when your name is called? Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on the screen when you speak.
Council President Darrell Clark.
Muted, sir.
Sorry, I'm present. Sorry.
Vice Chair Derek Green.
I'm present. Good afternoon, everyone on the committee.
Council Member Brian O'Neill.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Council Member Cindy Bass.
I just want to note for the record that Council Member Bass is connected. She may be having some audio challenges, but I just want to note for the record that she is in the room.
Council Member Curtis Jones Jr.
Madam Chair, Mr. President, colleagues, good afternoon.
And Council Member Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Council President, Madam Chair, I am present.
Is that it, Rachel?
Yes, that is it.
Okay, thank you. A quorum of the committee is present and the public hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Law and Government on Bill number 210669 and Resolution number 210692. Rachel, will you please read the title of the bill and resolution?
210669, an ordinance providing for the submission to the qualified electors of the City of Philadelphia of the proposal set forth in a resolution approved by council proposing an amendment to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter to revise the composition of the Zoning Board of Adjustment by increasing the number of appointees, providing for confirmation by council of appointees, and specifying qualifications that appointees must possess, and authorizing the appropriate officers to publish notice and to make arrangements for the special election. And 210692, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter to revise the composition of the Zoning Board of Adjustment by increasing the number of appointees, providing for the confirmation by council of appointees, and specifying qualifications that appointees must possess, and providing for the submission of the amendment to the electors of Philadelphia.
Before we begin to hear testimony from witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Now, before we call our next or the first panel to testify, I want to ask our council president, well, right now, council member Darrell Clark, the sponsor of the bill and resolution, if he'd like to make any opening comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just plain Darrell would suffice. First of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to testify briefly at this particular committee hearing on law and government and the proposed charter change initiative on the zoning board. Real quick, I know we've sent a number of memos to the members relating to this proposal going back to early summer. Essentially, this is as a result of an evolving zoning change. For those members that have been here for some time, you can recall when we did the zoning code reform some years ago, significant, massive project. Some of the outcomes weren't necessarily outcomes that we had anticipated. Therefore, you experience more variance that we traditionally have. But throughout that process, some of the challenges have been the relationship between the zoning board, which is a function of the government, and the local communities. The communities that, frankly, the zoning board should be an advocate for in terms of the development of their neighborhoods. With the unprecedented level of development that has happened, more and more frequently, there have been challenges as it relates to the function and the operation of the zoning board. Therefore, it caused us to have significant conversations, as a number of you members have, with members throughout the neighborhoods, both development community members, all the folks. And it was understood that there probably need to be some changes. One, as it relates to the composition of the zoning board, and I hate to use this term, but the credentials, because credentials are relative to what persons think should be sufficient for a particular issue, but a more defined role. Three, that the level of respect that should be due anyone who is interested. So basically the function of the zoning board, and then some issues with respect to how we proceed in these unprecedented times as it relates to the evolution of our city of Philadelphia. I want to thank the members of this committee, but more importantly, I want to thank the number of individuals that have participated in this process from communities across the city of Philadelphia. Today you'll hear testimony from a number of those organizations who do this for free. Because they love their communities, they know more about their communities than any of us, although we represent them officially. But at the end of the day, they have toiled in the vineyards, so to speak, making sure that their communities are done the appropriate way, which is why, as a part of this proposal, we recommend true neighborhood participation as it relates to actual members on that zoning board. Additionally, as it relates to this particular change in the zoning board, as you've seen, we just forwarded a list of boards and commissions in the city of Philadelphia that essentially represent pretty much all boards and commissions, all relative boards and commissions, some more so than others, that govern the city of Philadelphia's process. With the exception of the zoning board, currently the confirmation process is in place for those from the city solicitor on down to a neighborhood special service district, because we thought it was important that the appointment of these individuals be done in a transparent way. It be done in a public hearing. It be done in a way that could ensure that people had the ability to not only question, but the ability to put their input into that process. So we, based on that conversation with all of these various groups and members of the committee, we think this is a fair and equitable proposed zoning board change, reform, as we like to use the term, and we look forward to talking with the members today and getting the support of this august body to ensure that we put people at a level that they should feel comfortable about something as significant as the zoning board that dictates the development of their communities across the city of Philadelphia. So with that, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I know it's a little longer than I indicated earlier, but I just wanted to make sure we got all that in. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify briefly.
Thank you, Council President, Council Member Clark. Rachel, will you please call the first panel we have to testify this afternoon on Bill number 210669 and Resolution number 210692?
Yes, I will. And just for those viewing, there are 3 testifiers on this panel, and there's only one panel. If you are watching and you are waiting to be called by council's tech support, they should be calling you in a few minutes once we get on to the second testifier. I've had a couple people email me saying they haven't been called yet, so just listen out for a phone call shortly. The first panel, the first and only panel, is Ann Fedulin, Drew Murray, and Murray Spencer, in that order.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ann Fedulin. It's great to see you. You are connected. We can see you, so just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilmember Parker and members of the Law and Government Committee. I am Ann Fedulin, Director of Planning and Development. I'm here to testify on Bill number 210669 and Resolution number 210692, which were introduced into City Council on September 17th, 2021 by Councilmember Parker on behalf of Council President Clark. This legislative package provides for a ballot question that, if approved, would revise the composition of the Zoning Board of Adjustment in the following ways. 1, it would increase the size of the board from 5 to 7 members, all of whom would continue to be appointed by the mayor. 2, it would provide for City Council of Philadelphia confirmation of these appointments. And 3, require that the ZBA include members who possess specified areas of expertise and members who are recognized leaders from community organizations. While the administration supports the intent of this charter change to address issues with the ZBA, we are concerned that the charter change will significantly delay the ZBA's work and ultimately impede development. We are already operating under challenging circumstances with ever-growing lists of increasingly complicated cases. This additional step will pose another impediment to obtaining a quorum, as it will require the ZBA to meet the new quorum requirement of 4 sitting board members upon the charter change taking effect. So just to clarify, although the charter change would require up to 7 members, it does allow for us to keep the existing 5 members. However, the quorum requirement would change, which would mean that we would have to have 4 of those 5 present. And frankly, right now we are having difficulty sometimes getting 3 of the 5 to be present. So that's a little bit of a concern. As the change would take effect upon certification of the election results, likely when council may be in summer recess, we would be unable to sit new members, potentially resulting in further delays to the ZBA process. Additionally, we believe that the prescriptive ZBA membership requirements of this charter change will make it more difficult to attract members to the ZBA. The charter change requires members with various professional backgrounds to include an urban planner, an architect, an attorney with zoning experience, and an expert in real estate. Many of these professionals may not be willing to serve on the ZBA, as conflict of interest rules will significantly hamper their professional opportunities. Should a member of these professions be seated, there may be many cases where they must recuse themselves due to a conflict of interest, posing an additional quorum issue for the ZBA. We agree that the ZBA is a critical component of the city's zoning code, and that it is essential to ensure that the ZBA execute its authority in as professional a manner as possible. As always, we are open to working with council to develop proposed changes to the ZBA that will address the concerns that this charter change aims to target. Thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to testify, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. And I should mention on the line with me is Tanya Sunkett, our ZBA administrator, and also Martha Cross, our deputy director for planning and zoning. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ann, for your testimony. Rachel is the next person. Can you repeat that name?
It is Drew Murray.
Drew, are you connected?
Yes, I am, council member.
Thank you,
ready
Drew.
for me?
Okay, I can see you now. Just state your
All
name
right.
for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Sure. My name is Drew Murray. I am the chairman of the Philadelphia Crosstown Coalition. The Philadelphia Crosstown Coalition, as the name suggests, is a coalition of 36 RCOs from all around the city. And We have met a few times regarding this bill to decide whether or not we can take a position. A bill that has so many aspects, such as this one, so many levels, increasing the number, the credentials, etc. It's really hard for the Philadelphia Crosstown Coalition to take a hard position because since we are members who are RCOs, in order for them to vote, in order for many to vote, they have to go back to their RCO and ask for what position they should take in a vote. So because this has so many aspects, it was very difficult. But what we decided to do is we did vote, and we voted unanimously to support reforming the zoning, the intent, I should say, of reforming the zoning board of adjustments. And we carved out, a few aspects of the bill. There are aspects of the bill that our members liked, and there are aspects that there was some concern about. So what we decided to do was we voted to detail in testimony today which parts of the bill that we, for the most part, were in favor of. And those aspects are, number one, we are in favor of increasing the board from 5 to 7. I was asked to remind, as Ampadon has already said, that there's going to need to be a revision to the quorum aspect, whether it's revised to majority or revised to 4. We're also generally in support of the credentials that were listed, and specifically, number 1, the urban planner, and number 2, architect. So those were the 2 areas that we really liked the credentials for. We would ask that the architect be revised to architect or engineer, because we believe an engineer could also have the credentials to serve on the zoning board of adjustment. So those were the things that we decided as a group, as the coalition, to support as part of this bill. So thank you very much. And again, I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so very much, Drew, for your testimony. Is Murray Spencer connected?
I am.
Thank you. Yes, I can hear you now, Murray. State your name for the record and then feel free to proceed with your testimony.
My name is Murray Spencer. I'd like to say hello to my cousin Curtis Jones and my good friend Derek Green. And thank you all for the opportunity to testify in front of this committee to support Bill number 210669, which seeks to revise the composition of the Zoning Board of Adjustment as stated in the proposed legislation. I'm a board member of SOSNA and the SOSNA Zoning Committee Chair, and also the delegate from SOSNA to the Crosstown Coalition. We, SOSNA, support the increase in the members of ZBA, and would ask further that some of the specific credentials for its members, including the city planner, architect, or engineer, an attorney with zoning experience, person familiar with real estate finance, and perhaps a community leader or two be included. I know Ann Verdulin said that an architect may have to recuse himself, but I'd like to remind her, she probably already knows, that Tom Holloman, who's a sitting committee member, is an architect. He's always there, and I don't think he really has to recuse himself. He's probably retired, so he doesn't have to recuse himself for many projects. We like the practice of allowing the representative from SOSNA to testify at ZBA hearings, and when SOSNA feels the need to do so or support or not support a project needing a variance, we have been cut off from doing so over the course of this year to our dismay. And although we are volunteers performing a civic duty, per the Philadelphia zoning code, we hear about 4 to 5 projects a month. We've been praised by our district councilman Johnson for the work that we do. We want the ZBA to take us as seriously as we take our tasks. With that said, I'd like to be brief and just say we would like to support this legislation wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Murray Spencer. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jones for a question.
Madam Chair, I had to call in between the hearing. I blacked out my screen to see if that was really him, and it really was. I'm so proud of my cousin on my mother's side, who has been in the field of architecture for so very long, and has done so many good. I claim him. Full disclosure, he is my cousin. A lot of people say we're cousins, but play cousin. But he is actually my cousin. So if I have to recuse myself in some future form, no problem. But I claim him. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Whip Jones. Thank you, Council Member. Chair recognizes Council President, Council Member Darrell Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just had a couple of questions of Ms. Badulin. Thank you, Ms. Badulin. Thank you for your participation, your testimony today. Real quick, what's the current solicitation process for members of the zoning board?
Currently they are appointed by the mayor. That's a function that comes out of the mayor's office. And so those folks are solicited and embedded via the mayor.
I asked that question because you said that there could potentially be difficulty in getting people who are willing to participate. And by saying that, it makes me wonder, how do you give people that opportunity to participate? I know a lot of people would love to be on boards and commissions. We have people across the city. So to suggest that...
Let me clarify. Can I clarify that? I think what it is not necessarily difficulty in getting people in general to participate. I think it's certain professional folks that, well, I think we agree, I know we agree, that it makes sense to professionalize this board. This is a board that has probably become one of the most important boards in the city. And I think we agree with you on that. And I think we also agree that it would be very beneficial to have the types of folks and with professional backgrounds that are mentioned in this legislation. And as Mr. Spencer alluded to, we have a wonderful ZBA board member who's an architect in Tom Holloman, who's retired. So that's convenient, so he doesn't necessarily have to recuse himself. I do think there is some concern that, having to have a real estate attorney, a planner, going through the laundry list, that getting each one of those and being able to find that sort of, golden ticket like Tom Holloman, where they're also retired from their profession so they wouldn't have any conflicts, may be a little more difficult. And then I also think, quite frankly, this board is not volunteer, but it's like sort of one step removed from that, in that the compensation based on how much time it needs to be dedicated, particularly as we see more and more development happening in the city, and it takes, potentially 2 days out of every 5 days in a work week. That's why I think it may be a little bit difficult to attract qualified professionals to come to the board, because if they are still active, it means of giving a chunk of their time that they would normally dedicate to their day job for not much competition. And it may be harder for us to find retired professionals who do have this type of time commitment available. So,
but that's something that's already in the compensation, the stipend is not something that we're proposing to change, unless you're suggesting that we should increase it. I mean,
I'm just saying that, let me just say, you sort of get what you pay for. And if we're looking for people that are current professionals practicing these careers right now, it may be difficult to attract them if they're not justly compensated for their time.
So are you suggesting, as per the, 10 minutes before the hearing started, a recommendation that people have a background in the file,
Yeah, I think rather than be so prescriptive, and let me see if I pull it because I know that the administration did proffer amendments, that the backgrounds of the members should reflect expertise, rather than saying there must be a planner, an architect, a zoning law. So just softening that language a little bit.
To give you more flexibility?
Right, exactly.
And the question is the importance of people within that group. If you decide not to opt to include somebody that has that level of expertise, I just want to, like I said, we did a lot of work and we wanted to make sure that it was reflective of all the work that was done. Concerned having some people saying they want this level of professionalism in these various fields, and now you're suggesting that, well, it could possibly be. I mean, I'm a little
Yeah,
ambivalent.
and again, I think we want the board to be as professional as possible, but we also want to have a board. Right, and we want to be able to have the work of the board continue. And we just don't want it to get to the point where we really can't figure out how to get the board fully operational because we're not able to find folks.
All right.
I mean,
So-
hopefully we will be able to find folks, and they won't have to recuse themselves, and we'll be able to get a quorum. That would be the perfect world. But we do have some concerns, just given that it's been difficult to try to attract folks that have the professional experience, because a lot of them do say, I would have to recuse myself, a significant amount of the time.
Well, I'm not going
And
to
it's just a concern.
All right, I understand, but and I'm not going to belabor the point because I know I'm infringing on the committee's time. You don't have a process of solicitation that you know of, speaking on behalf of the administration. So one, I would question how difficult it is to get people to participate. This whole issue around compensation, that's a concern, and that's something that you all should recommend or address. The other issue in the proposed legislation, we are proposing that members from the community that actually have participation on the board, I guarantee you, if passed, the most significant problem we would have is to figure out who to select from the community. So you would not have a dearth of individuals that are willing to participate in the zoning board. So maybe if you opened it up, you would increase the expression of interest on that. So, okay. And this other issue about conflict of interest, that's been one of the, and let's be candid, that's been one of the criticisms of some of the past zoning boards, conflict of interest. So wherever that's the case, that's probably something should be referenced and should be potentially eliminated. Every now and then you get a conflict of interest, but it's clear that that is one of the significant criticisms that we've heard from community groups across the city of Philadelphia. So, okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to get a little clarity on that. Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to question Ms. Fadola.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me just look here in the chat to make sure that there are no more questions. Are there any other questions from our council colleagues for members of this panel? Hearing none, Rachel, the next person I have on my list is Catherine Blount, the Citywide RCO Coalition of Philadelphia, but is she a part of the group that has to be dialed in?
No, she actually is unavailable, so her written testimony has just been circulated.
Okay, and so we have 9 people, I think, signed up for public testimony, and is now the time that we will have them connected?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we would need a small break, Mrs. Chair. Madam Chair, just to get them connected. Just a few minutes.
Sure. So for the viewing public, if you would just be patient with us while we give our technical team the opportunity to dial in those who have signed up to provide public comment. Thank you all so very much for your patience. There being no one else with questions for this panel, we are now going to move into the public testimony portion of the hearing, where individuals who called my office to sign up to testify will be dialed into the hearing. We will take a brief 5-minute recess to give our technology professionals some time to connect the individuals who signed up. So thank you.
Thank you for calling Philadelphia City Council. A beeping noise will indicate
Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you so very much. Before we call the first person who's presence of Council Member Mark Squilla, who is a member of the committee. Council Member Squilla, thank you so very much for being
Madam
here.
Chair.
Thank you. Rachel, will you please call the first individual who signed up to speak? Please note that due to the sake of time, we are going to limit public testimony between 2 to 3 minutes, and you will hear a bell ring, and you know you have about 30 seconds left.
The first public testifier that we have is Valerie Ross.
Good afternoon, Valerie Ross. Are you connected and ready to proceed?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Valerie Ross. Should I commence? That's all you want?
Yes, Valerie, you can proceed with your testimony.
Okay, very good. So I'm with the Citywide RCO Coalition of Philadelphia and West Philadelphians for Progressive Planning and Preservation, RCO. I strongly support and thank Darrell Clark and the sponsoring city council members who've put forward this important resolution to reform the ZBA. Our coalition and our first letter to the city council demanding ZBA reform was generated by a shared realization of our groups of RCOs from across the city. We felt that participatory democracy which is at the heart of urban planning and city governance, was being made a mockery of by the ZBA. Our combined experiences led us to understand that the ZBA had reached a level of arrogance and indifference toward long-term residents and RCOs that was becoming blatantly abusive. The chair jovially partnered with developers' attorneys to silence, rebut, rebuke, and ridicule community members and organizations there to protest appeals. Developers' attorneys were allowed to control the screens, the speakers, and the discourse, and the ZBA has, as you know, rubber stamped 92% of all appeals and handed out a theatrical and trivial set of denials easily overturned in the Court of Common Pleas. We were shocked as a group in reviewing the process by which these ZBA members were selected, as well as their credentials, not only the conflicts of interest that are blatant, but also merely the lack of qualifications for making these exceedingly impactful decisions on our communities and our city. Some 30,000 Black residents have been compelled to exit Philadelphia in the last 10 years. We have growing homelessness and unaffordability. Our neighborhoods are pocked with ugly, shoddy development, and altogether we feel as if, as some have said, we're being invaded. This land grab, readily facilitated by a feckless ZBA, has to be stopped before the damage is irreparable. The ZBA willfully has ignored the only legal grounds for granting appeals, which is demonstrating unnecessary hardship, and we believe that must be in part because they're simply not qualified to make those sophisticated assessments. We need to bring the ZBA into the 21st century, staffing not just architects and zoning attorneys, but also some people equipped to assess what we now understand are the widespread socioeconomic, racial, health, environmental, and infrastructural impacts of development. It's not enough to declare we need density or a building looks nice or it's near a transit stop. We need to be thinking about, as a ZBA, what the larger impact of development is on our communities. If we can't staff the ZBA properly, then we must rethink its function and existence altogether. Finally, we need to mention the elephant in the room, which is our lack of an updated comprehensive city plan. That is at the heart of this. The ZBA would not have as much labor and decisions to make if we had a decent and well-informed city plan. The ZBA won't resolve.
Valerie, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up because you're over the time.
Okay. Then let me just say, ZBA reform won't solve all the problems that we have in the city with development, but it's a brilliant start. And we thank all of you. I thank all of you for the work you're doing on this. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your testimony, Valerie Ross. And if there is anything else that you wanted to add, feel free to submit it to us in writing. We will give it to the stenographer to make sure it is in our minutes. Rachel, will you please call the next person who signed up to speak?
The next person is Michael Ross.
Michael Ross, good afternoon. Are you connected and ready to proceed?
Yes, I am.
Okay, just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Thank you for being here.
My name is Michael Ross. I'm president of Southwest Philadelphia District Services and a member of the citywide RCO Coalition of Philadelphia. And as far as I want to thank City Council and President Clark for introducing the bill 210669 and the resolution 210692 calling for a charter change to reform the Zoning Board of Administration of Adjustment. The Zoning Board, I've had experiences where they've actually shut me down, and I'm a registered RCO, would not allow me to talk, allow developers to control the meeting, and it just needs to be changed. There needs to be a whole reform. And a letter written by the citywide RCO coalition, we are in agreement with the proposed 7 members Zoning Board of Adjustment. But everything that you guys have proposed, we are in agreement with that. I compliment Valerie. She said everything, and I agree with everything she said. It's just right now it's not happening like it should. The community is not being heard. They're not allowed to share. They've been cut off. And my organization, we have been doing this since they started in 2012. And the last couple of years has been the worst that we've ever seen it, as far as the ZBA allowing the community to share their input on any type of hearing. And also them siding with the developers in practically almost every case that we've been involved in. We support your change. We thank the City Council and we thank President Clark. That's all I have.
Thank you so very much, Michael, for your testimony. Rachel, can you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Reverend Chester Williams.
Reverend Chester Williams, are you connected?
Yes, I am. Thank the Lord.
Thank you, Reverend
Can you
Chester.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Good.
well. State your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yes, Reverend Chester H. Williams, President and founder of the True and Dolphin Neighbor Organization since 1981, and also a part of the RCO Coalition. I'd like to say to each and every one, it's time for improvement. The ZBA has been existing for a time, and I look at what RCOs was organized for, is to work with the community. And it seemed like some way they had begun to get off track. And by doing this, we need to bring it back on track. And what they say about being on time is that in all things get understanding. And we have a time now to regroup, that we can be more powerful in working with the community to get what they want in their neighborhood. So I hope that we all understand that it's important that we every now and then have to vamp certain issues so that we can stay on track of our goal. And I like to say when the RCOs was organized, they work with the community. But when you go to the ZBA, I hate to say it, but it's true, it seems like you're being pushed aside. And I think it's time for new faces. For people to be refocused, to realize why they're there. They are there to support the community and keep us on track, not to humiliate us, not to push us aside, make us feel like we're not needed and we're not wanted. So I'm saying this because I love all the jobs that you guys have. Lord, no, I don't think you'll ever have a problem or anyone to get on this committee, the one lady said, and I was re-edified that there are so many people educated in this city of Philadelphia. I'll be glad to apply for these positions if we get the word out. That's the most important thing, is getting the word out to the grassroots people that these positions are open and what the qualifications are. So let's push that aside, think they may not find qualified people. You're going to be overwhelmed with qualified people. And many of them got 2 degrees. I know when I was going to college, I was happy to get 1 degree. But these young people today is blessed to get 2 and 3 degrees. So I say this in conclusion. God bless all of you. And I love this bill, and I love the resolution. And I thank you, each and every one of you. God bless you, and be encouraged to hold on and keep looking up. If you need us, call us. God bless. That's the end.
Thank you, Reverend Chester Williams, for your testimony. Rachel, can you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
David Feldman.
David Feldman, are you connected?
Yes, Chair Parker. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. State your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is David Feldman. I serve as Executive Director of the Development Workshop. Thank you, Chair Parker, Council President Clark, or just plain Darrell if you prefer, and members of the Council Committee on Law and Government. Thank you for hearing our testimony today. The Development Workshop is a group of construction companies, law firms, developers, architecture and engineering firms, real estate professionals and economists, working to grow the population, create jobs, strengthen the tax base, and promote diversity and inclusion within our industry. We understand City Council's intent to increase the transparency, diversity, and accountability of the ZBA. The workshop wholeheartedly agrees with the Council's overarching goals but we have some concerns about unintended consequences of the legislation. Our first concern is around increasing the size from 5 to 7 and issues with quorum, consistent with Ann Fadulin's comments already, so I'll skip our comments. Secondly, the workshop has concerns about the language used to describe the areas of expertise and sensitivity to community concerns of future ZBA members. The workshop recommends that this language be replaced with a statement that members should be qualified to uphold the purposes of the zoning code as expressed in section 14-101. In particular, the workshop suggests that the language protection of the character of Philadelphia's neighborhoods be removed from the legislation in its entirety. While clearly not intended, similar language has been used to justify preservation of segregated neighborhoods. The workshop believes the council's legislative goals can be accomplished without this language. Thirdly, the workshop recognizes that council's confirmation of mayoral appointments is not unique and is currently required in other instances, including school board appointments. However, the city is organized as a strong mayor government, and the workshop cautions against legislation that would diminish the mayor's authority, responsibility, and accountability under the charter. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the workshop recognizes council's concerns around the increasing volume of variances sought by the ZBA. However, the workshop does not believe that this charter change will reduce the number of variances coming to the ZBA, as the core reason that so many variances are requested is the ongoing delay in remapping the new code that was adopted in 2012. The Planning Commission undertook a multi-year process with extensive community engagement to match citywide mapping with the new code. Based on the resident feedback, they developed recommended remapping to match current building needs with community vision with the new code. However, less than half of these changes have been enacted by the respective district council members through legislation. If these changes were enacted, there would be fewer variance requests submitted to the ZBA. We thank you and the sponsors and the committee for the opportunity to testify today and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, David Feldman, for your testimony. Right now, the chair wants to acknowledge that Councilmember Cindy Bass is present. We noted that she was just having some audio challenges earlier. Councilmember Bass, I can't see. Can I hear you?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I am present.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Thank you so very much, Council
Thank you.
Member. Rachel, will you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Mark Zachary.
Mark Zachary, are you connected?
Yes, hello. So I've got a little bit of a different perspective. My name is Mark Zachary. I live in the West Kensington area in the 19133 zip code. What this is a clear power grab from the mayor to the council, period. This is just politicizing the entire process of zoning, and it enhances councilmanic prerogative. And in my opinion, the only reason for this is because of a very select group of short-sighted people, including the RCOs, who are against height and density. I'm going to call them the Parking and Height Coalition, which should really be known as the Anti-Affordability and Change Coalition. It's mostly led by the RCOs, but there's a few other organizations and people, especially members of council, of course, who could belong to this. This fits neatly into certain council persons' priorities, which is focused for some reason on limiting height and density because they and their allies think that somehow fights gentrification. These RCOs are notorious anti-density, height, and affordability, and it's directly counterproductive to the city in terms of affordability and the climate change priorities of the city as laid out in charter. The truth is that there are so many areas and parcels that are underzoned, which is leading to the developers requesting to go higher, to go have higher density, and that is why the ZBA's decisions are becoming more prevalent. Because like the previous person said, you didn't remap the city according to the plan that was recommended. The best way to fight for affordability is increasing height and density along with an affordability requirement, especially along transit corridors. People are going to want to move to my area, the 19122, 19133, and 19125, and you're not going to stop that. And building buildings that are 20 feet high, I'm exaggerating, but building short buildings along important corridors like North American, Girard, and Front Street is only going to increase prices from the increased competition of people moving to this area, you know. And again, this has to do with the fact that council did not follow through on the plan, and it is taking away from council's prerogative what the ZBA is doing by approving developments in areas that developers are requesting. Namely, I can think of a few examples along American Street, which is a largely empty corridor, and yet the people have refused to rezone this to a more appropriate height and residential requirements. So again, I would hope that the people of Philadelphia see through this absolute farce and vote this down come the special election. But I hope that the members of council who are behind this, you know, are happy with themselves for taking power away from the mayor. And in a sense, the only thing you're wanting to do is take power to reduce density into your own hands. And that's exactly the opposite of what we need to do for the future of this city. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mark Zachary, for your testimony. Rachel, can you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Christopher Masia Smith.
Christopher,
Hello,
are you
can you hear me?
connected? Yes.
Yes,
we
I'm here.
hear
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Christopher. Just state your name for the record and feel free to proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Christopher Mejia Smith, and I've served on the zoning committee for my local RCO for over 5 years. This testimony is not on behalf of that organization, rather it's my own. Over the last 5 years, I've collaborated with my neighbors through multiple proposed developments, and I've observed an insistence that developers adhere to the zoning process. I'm using quotes here because this zoning process is not actually founded in the zoning law, but rather is a set of norms to which developers should abide. According to some, all development must go through the zoning process where, in the face of an unworkable or nonsensical underlying zoning designation, a developer meets with community representatives and the district council person to propose a project. Upon reaching an agreement, the developer appeals to the ZBA, and only because of these local approvals, the developer can get their permits. This is how business has been done in this city for a long time, and I can understand frustrations that sometimes zoning variances are granted without both RCO and councilperson support. However, the fundamental issue driving these frustrations is not the structure of the ZBA, it is that this zoning process no longer functions now that our city is growing with intense housing demand. When our city experienced both underinvestment and lower housing demand, it made financial sense for a developer to navigate the zoning process. However, now that financial benefits of development outweigh the political cost of not obtaining local support, and this is where the zoning process breaks, because the legal case behind seeking a zoning variance is actually strengthened by the very nature of the underlying nonsensical zoning. So as they say, what got us here won't keep us here. We need to change how things are done in this city regarding development. But I do not believe that we need to radically restructure the Zoning Board of Adjustments. The ZBA should be staffed by professional and ethical members who can competently evaluate the technical requirements of Chapter 14 for hardship. These requirements do not necessitate a charter change. What we need to do as a city is to make ZBA hearings a rare occurrence. While more than 85% of the zoning permits obtained in this city do not involve the ZBA, this administrative panel still hears between 50 to 100 cases per month. So how do we reduce the caseload of the ZBA? The answer is actually quite simple. Eliminate the nonsensical zoning designations that serve as pretext for the zoning process. The well-intentioned purpose of this process is to ensure community control over neighborhood development. Remapping our neighborhoods will achieve the same outcome, but with greater strength. The community's voice will be enshrined in the law. By embedding community voices into the law, a far greater number of people can have their say in shaping development. Some neighborhoods have 8 or more overlapping RCOs, and often there are contentious divisions as to who speaks for a community. Sensical remapping will unify community sentiment and will ensure that a community is not shaped solely by the loudest voices who have the privilege of being able to attend RCO meetings. Replacing what is known as the zoning process with proper remappings will also avoid many of the bad development outcomes and can ensure neighborhood assets are preserved. It is an undisputable fact that if in 2015 the St. Laurentius Church had been zoned to allow for multiple families to live on the site, that community icon would have stood for countless more decades. This church, now slated for demolition, is a testament to how the zoning process.
Excuse me.
Yep.
You're over your time, so I need you to wrap it up for me, okay?
Yes, I have one last paragraph.
Sure.
Again, so this church, now slated for demolition, is a testament to how the zoning process can backfire and cause the very outcomes community leaders seek to avoid. So yes, we do need to change how things are done as our city changes. But that change does not to be within the ZBA. The change that is needed is to engage in thoughtful, community-driven zoning remappings that will accommodate the continued growth that our city of over 1.6 million Philadelphians is experiencing. We should do remappings to enshrine the community's voice in the law so our neighbors don't need a petition and obscure administrative panel in order to be heard. With all this in mind, and specifically with the recent changes to the leadership of the ZBA, I believe the proposed charter change is unnecessary and should not be approved. Let's utilize the other tools in our belt to ensure development is community-led first. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher, for your testimony. Rachel, can you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Yes, the next individual is Odessa Tate.
Odessa, are you connected?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me clear?
Yes, I can hear you. Odessa, just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Hello, everyone. My name is Odessa Tate, and I represent All in the Family CDC of Strawberry Mansion. I am in favor of Bill 210669. Diversity is the conduit for change to reduce manipulation and better manage one-sided or vague value sets amongst groups. The people are deserving of versatility and adequate representation to make informed and well-rounded decisions. Adequate representation can assist with the ebb and flow that lack of diversity can make an attribution to. Corrective measures to obtain real problem solvers can effectively analyze loopholes and group negligence by impactfully determining the goals or obligation, failures, and lack of adherence to decipher principles and code of conduct, as well as determine cause and effect, further linking the pros and cons of an outcome. Outlining specificity and qualifications appointees must possess, including having demonstrated sensitivity to community concerns regarding development and the protection of the character of Philadelphia's neighborhood, is an innocuous change that can help revamp a flawed system. We do not need manufactured boards deciding what is best for the people. We need a culmination of diversity, empathy, and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Odessa, for your testimony. Rachel, will you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Bonita Cummings.
Bonita Cummings. Bonita, are you connected?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Parker and council members on the Committee of Law and Government. And good afternoon. My name is Bonita Cummings. I'm the Director of Strawberry Mansion Community Concern and a member of the citywide RCO Coalition of Philadelphia. Continuing to conduct the Zoning Board of Adjustment variance process in its present state would be an admission that our city of Philadelphia is well aware of the problem of mistreatment of pre-existing neighbors and residents, but we are not going to even attempt to change it. With the much-needed revision to the composition of the present Zoning Board of Adjustment being introduced in Bill number 210669 and Resolution number 210692, Philadelphia has an opportunity with the amendment to the Home Rule Charter via a ballot question to the electors to demonstrate to the world we will not continue to traumatize. We will not continue to traumatize the citizenry with our present Zoning Board of Adjustment practices. Further, changes in the Zoning Board of Adjustment process has to tie back to each neighborhood getting redesignations of properties and land, and that the residents of those neighborhoods are actually a part of and have input and equity in those processes. We must do this for the health, welfare, and safety of all. So we must change the Zoning Board of Adjustment to adhere to lawful, qualified practices with members who are empathetic and that understand and care about vulnerable communities. And again, we must do redesignations of our neighborhoods. We look forward to the citizens of Philadelphia getting copies of the legislation, reading it and studying it, working with their respective supported elected officials and representing community organizations or groups, and join in getting it passed on the May primary ballot election day on May 17, 2022. So I'd like to thank the Committee on Law and Government, the chairwoman, and Darrell Clark for allowing me to have a voice today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Bonita Cummings, for your testimony. Rachel, will you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Chris Bordelon.
Chris, are you connected?
Yes.
Okay, just state your name for the record, Chris, and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and committee members. My name is Chris Bordelon. By way of background, I'm an attorney from Northeast Philadelphia, and I've served on the board of an all-volunteer registered community organization, the Somerton Civic Association, for about 7 years now. Today, I'm testifying only in my personal capacity. The defects that people have identified in the ZBA center on a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability to the public. The ZBA does not provide reasons for its decisions, either on the record or in writing, even though current law requires that it, quote-unquote, state in writing the reasons for the decision. The ZBA does not publish hearing transcripts. The ZBA's decisions are binding on participants and their neighbors, but unlike judicial offices in our state, ZBA office holders change without any public input. The ZBA ignores representations of community members and groups. Although the ZBA is supposed to apply zoning law, its decisions sometimes seem to reflect only the commands of the administration and district council members exercising extra-legal prerogative power for developers or investors. If those are the ZBA's problems, these so-called reform bills unfortunately do not address them. Adding more members or requiring that they come from some occupational background won't make the ZBA's operations more transparent or make the ZBA more accountable to the public. The ZBA is too powerful a decision maker to have its composition controlled only by the mayor, or the mayor and a majority of council. To compel the ZBA to practice transparency and to make it accountable to the public, these bills should require, first, that the ZBA follow more robust procedures, and second, that the ZBA be elected by the people. Otherwise, I'm concerned that nothing meaningful will change. Thank you for your time today.
Chris, thank you so very much for your testimony. Rachel, will you please call the next individual who signed up to speak?
Yes, and this is the last person on our list. Her name is Susan Nam.
Susan, are you connected?
Yes, I am.
Okay, just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Okay, thank you. My name is Susan Nam, and I'm here with the Citywide RCO Coalition of Philadelphia as well, and I'm also a member of East Mount Airy Neighbors RCO. Shout out to our council person, Cindy Bass. As our city is in a constant ebb and flow of change, as is the natural evolution to any prospering city or town, the updating of policies and legislation and the language in which we use to create them should be just as natural. I'm speaking today in support of resolution number 210692 and ordinance number 210669. What we've done collectively with the Citywide RCO Coalition thus far is the very purpose of RCOs amplified. Rather than sitting in our frustrations, we acted on them. President Council Clark's referendum is but just one of those fruits of our efforts, and also systemic proof that it is in our by rights as caring and intelligent citizens that our seat and voice at this table makes for a more complete and whole story. Being that this ordinance and resolution are addressing much needed updates regarding the structural and procedural foundations that the Zoning Board of Adjustment stands on, we also must note that it is just one out of several moving parts that directly shape our city's landscape and housing, one variance at a time, but it is a start. Many of us supporting the referendum come with no regard for monetary profit, in fact, the opposite. We come with our own receipts of volunteer time, money, and energy poured endlessly into our neighborhoods that could never be measured into profit gain loss percentages. This is the kind of currency that brings necessary balance to the dollars and cents. It is our actions on the ground that are the birthplaces of Philadelphia culture that makes us what we are and are also responsible for healing grounds that our city so very much needs. Our legislation should be reflective of those impacts. No one will argue that profit is the crux of our capital economy, but what we are saying is that our communities will not be dictated by it. This referendum is in alignment towards more transparent and equitable laws. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with our lawmakers, developers, and other organizations alike as an equal voice as we create new histories and precedents for the city of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Susan, for your testimony. I just want to state for the record that this will conclude our public comment period. Rachel, that we did exhaust our list. There is no one else on the line who called and signed up to speak?
That is correct. There is no one else on our list.
Okay, and for the record, is there anyone else here to testify on the resolution whose name that has not yet been called? Hearing none, are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? There being no further questions from members of the committee and no other witnesses to testify, I will ask if there's anyone else present in this hearing whose name we have failed to call and that wishes to offer testimony on any of the bills being considered today. Hearing none, I want to thank all of the panels and witnesses for their participation today. We value your opinions. I now invite all panels and witnesses to please disconnect from the meeting before we go into our public meeting. We will now pause the proceedings briefly as multiple participants leave the hearing. Tech team, am I okay to proceed?
Yes, Madam Chair.
This concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bill and resolution before this committee today. We will now reconvene the public meeting and call the roll. We will now convene the public meeting. Rachel, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on the screen when you speak.
Council President Darrell Clark.
Present. I'm here.
Vice Chair Derek Green.
I am present. Good afternoon.
Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
Present. Good afternoon.
Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Good afternoon. I am present. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr.
Good afternoon. I am present.
Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm present.
Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and colleagues. Present.
And that's it.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. We will now go into our public meeting. The chair recognizes Vice Chair Councilmember Green for a motion on bill number 210669.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that bill number 210669 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Okay. Thank you. It has been seconded, but I see Council President's hand up. Chair recognizes Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think we had an amendment
to the resolution. Yes.
Oh, to the resolution. I'm sorry. See, this is why I don't get on these things, right? I'm sorry.
Rusty.
Okay, just for the record, the chair notes for the record that Councilmember Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210669 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair now recognizes Vice Chair Councilmember Green for a motion on the amendment to resolution number 210692.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer an amendment to resolution number 210692. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of this committee. I move that the amendment to resolution number 210692 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to resolution number 210692 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the amendment to resolution number 210692 has been approved. The chair recognizes Vice Chair Councilmember Green for a motion on resolution number 210692 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that resolution number 210692 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember O'Neill seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that resolution number 210692 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. If any bills or resolutions were not considered at the public meeting, at this time, we're going to conclude the business before the Committee on Law and Government today. I want to thank you all so very much for your attendance. I do want to state for the record that I did receive some text messages from some folks who had some concerns, and there is always an opportunity to have a conversation about your concerns, and I just strongly encourage you to reach out to the sponsor of the bill, who is our president, the City Council of Philadelphia. Never say that we are never interested in hearing any recommendations, questions, or concerns you may have. So thank you all so very much for being here today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.